All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the channel. I'm your host, Daniel Cody. This is where I give commentary and reviews on all things wrestling. First and foremost, before I get started, thank you to all of you who have been viewing over the past. For those of you who missed it, be sure to check out a couple of days ago my SmackDown review, as well as my thoughts on Extreme Rules 2021. That being said, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let's get started with a special. As promised, today we are doing an On This Day review from the past, No Mercy 2004, because it was on this very day of the week. 17, I should say, 17 years ago on this very day, on this very date, where No Mercy '04 happened. And warning disclaimer, I'm not going to say the exact matches in the exact order, so my apologies for that. But let's get down in today's review. First off, Booker T versus John Cena. This match, I don't know if it was a best of seven series or a best of five series, but it was a series because both of them, as Charles Robinson mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, were 2 for 2. Also, so we know one of the victories that John Cena had was at SummerSlam '04, another review from the past that I covered last month. Yeah, it was last. No, yeah, it was last. No, it was a couple of months ago because that was August. But either way, nevertheless, 2 for 2 in the best of series. John Cena versus Booker T will conclude at No Mercy, and much like this game here, one of the games I'm proud to have owned, the match started off with a stare down, and it begun with punches. And if you ever played SmackDown versus Raw, you know that in the exhibition matches, you can choose between tests of strength or stare down. And in the stare down, you stare your opponent down and you press X and deliver the punch. Nostalgia. Good times. But either way, the match started off Booker T saying, talking trash, I'm going to bust you up. It was very competitive. And one of the main memories of that match was the famous running bulldog that would become a poster and a thumbnail for that YouTube match, as well as a poster for WrestleMania 22 for whatever reason. But nonetheless, a great match that Booker T was about to get a chair, and the referee warned him, don't get yourself disqualified. And of course, he changed his mind, but John Cena ended the match with his FU for the win in New Jersey, becoming the undisputed U.S. heavyweight champion. Unfortunately, as far as Cena and his fans in Boston were concerned, 5 days later, the debuting Carlito would come in and start his rivalry with Cena, using his own chain to win his first match. Moving on, an angry giant versus the Olympic tyrant, as Theodore Long put it. This whole thing started when a couple of months prior to that, or a couple of weeks prior, Eddie and Kurt Angle, who had an amazing rivalry, Eddie, who also got a victory over Luther Reigns that very night at No Mercy, by the way. Eddie and Kurt Angle had an amazing rivalry, which was also covered at SummerSlam 2004, which I did a review on. They had a great rivalry, which concluded in a 2 out of 3 falls one day, one Thursday, and then next Thursday we had a lumberjack match, which was indecisive because of the lumberjacks fighting and Big Show returning and destroying everyone. Next week, a couple of weeks later, or probably the next, whenever, Big Show had a contract choice between Eddie or who he faced at last year's No Mercy, or Kurt Angle, who he hadn't faced at a No Mercy yet. He chose Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle, who we last saw was in a wheelchair after being choke slammed off of some type of balcony or something by the Big Show. So, Kurt Angle and Big Show had their own rivalry at the time, and Mark Jindrak got involved, and Kurt Angle used a tranquilizer to shoot the Big Show, putting him to sleep like they did Vin Diesel on Triple X, and shaved his head. How humiliating. So Big Show was pretty pissed off about that, and that match was very one-sided. Big Show tossed Kurt Angle all over the ring in that match, and of course, no one was allowed to interfere, or Kurt Angle would be fired. Kurt Angle, of course, decided to run away through the audience and get count out, but Theodore Long wasn't having it, and if Kurt didn't show up to fight, he would be fired. Theodore Long will not tolerate cowards on his show. So he came in, Kurt Angle came back in, and somehow was able to go after the Big Show's left leg and isolate that and keep the Giant down long enough to get an angle lock on. But it didn't stay that way for long, as Big Show was able to recover and deliver a super choke slam from the corner all the way down the turnbuckle post of the ring, all the way down to the floor. 1, 2, 3. The ring wrap. Speaking of cowards not being tolerated by Theodore Long, this brings us to Billy Kitman, former WCW star turned WWE star, versus tag team partner, our former tag team partner, Paul London. Very exciting tag team that I enjoyed. I was right around 10 years old when this happened. They were explosive, but this thing got interesting because Billy Kitman had put Chavo unintentionally out of action for several weeks because of the shooting star press, which is his move, went wrong. So over the next couple of weeks, he would struggle with it, and they would lose the titles to Kenzo Suzuki and Rene Dupree. Speaking of Rene Dupree, I hope it's not true. I hope The Undertaker did not do it. He probably didn't. I don't know. The Undertaker's my idol, but I hope it's not true. But either way, Rene and Suzuki would win the tag team championships. Also, Suzuki and Rene retained in a dirty fashion against an awesome tag team of RVD versus Rey Mysterio. But back to the matters at hand. Billy Kitman didn't want to do the shooting star press, and this would cause division between him and London. And of course, when Booker T and London went together for a match, Billy Kitman came in and struck him, London I'm speaking of, with the chair, which would lead to a match at No Mercy. A match that Paul London came in starting strong, but Billy Kitman came back and took control of most of the match by going after Paul London's ribs, working on the ribs. And of course, London would fight back eventually and try to use. If you played this game, you know that if you're Paul London, you get on top of the ropes and you tap L1 and R1. No, that's to reverse. But how do you steal the finisher? Darn it, I don't have time to talk about it. But all I know is you can steal finishers back when it was L1. I believe it was L1 and R1. Yes, when the momentum is doubled and you have a WWE bar on the side, on your top side in the game. He tried it, didn't work, and the fans actually got excited when Billy Kitman went for the shooting star press and won the match. Of course, Billy Kitman was bleeding and had to be carried out on a stretcher. And then the original heel move, blame the fans. Toxic, what's that group called on NXT? Toxic Attraction did it. Seth Rollins did it. What is with everyone blaming the fans? It's all your fault. Stop blaming the fans for everything. But either way, Billy Kitman blamed the fans for everything and then gave him the shooting star press off the top rope while London was strapped. I don't know where Billy Kitman is today. Where is he now? Somebody let me know. London as well. But moving on, this is where things get real interesting. This match, in my personal opinion, should have been a part of the Undertaker's deadliest matches. I didn't have the DVD, but I was very fortunate to see videos of the whole show posted on the internet, and it was very entertaining, and it was more fun to watch at night, by the way. And the fact that the Undertaker narrated the whole video, or narrated the build up to every match he had, was awesome. This match should have been on Undertaker's deadliest matches. Undertaker versus JBL in a last ride match. We saw what happened, and I covered what happened at SummerSlam 2004. That was one of the strangest matches I ever seen. It didn't seem like the fans were interested. They were more interested in waving and stuff like that. But I gave my thoughts on the strangeness of the crowd that night also. If you haven't already and you want to check it out, you can. But Undertaker versus JBL last ride match. One of the interesting build-ups of this match was the return of the Undertaker's former allies, both Viscera and Gangrel. Last I saw Viscera, I'm going to tell you this story. When I was 10 and I first saw Viscera, I remember thinking to myself, that's that guy whose picture was on SmackDown 2. How many of you ever played SmackDown 2? Like if you've ever done that. My cousin, I didn't own SmackDown 2, but my cousin actually did, and I would go over his house one time to play that, so that was pretty cool. And a couple of friends owned it as well. I never did, but I saw some people play it. But that was the first time I saw Viscera outside of SmackDown 2. How many of you remember that game where the superstars would come out like this during the Titantron was playing? You didn't see them coming down to the ring. You just saw them walking like this while the Titantron was in the background. We all remember those days. Man, a lot of people said those were good times. But moving forward, all members of the Undertaker's former Ministry of Darkness, JBL was also a part of that. But Undertaker made short work of both Gangrel and Viscera, delivering a chokeslam, by the way, to Viscera. God rest his soul. Interesting. So after eliminating former members that JBL paid off and hanging Orlando Jordan to the cross like he was Jesus Christ, it left the Undertaker versus JBL one-on-one in a last ride match, which I think should have been a part of the Undertaker's most deadliest matches. And also humorous fact, Undertaker is the only watching the Undertaker is the only time I can be entertained by caskets and hearses. That's the only time I find caskets and hearses entertaining to watch at night. But I love watching the Undertaker, but I love to watch him more at night. But either way, moving on, the match was great. Like Michael Cole said, it was not going to be a wrestling match. It was an all-out brawl. JBL is known for his brawling style, and The Undertaker is the best pure striker in the WWE, as Michael Cole says. And of course, less than 5 minutes into the match, Undertaker goes for a chokeslam, takes control, but he made a mistake. When he was unhooking the Spanish announce table, he took his eyes off JBL. Bam! JBL hits him with the steel steps, which got him disqualified against Hardcore Holly 3 days prior. So JBL takes control, and then The Undertaker tombstones him. This is where things get real interesting. This is where the match gets really interesting. And this is after JBL goes for a dive-in shoulder tackle, which he does not do often at the time. But what gets real interesting is JBL gets tombstoned on the stairs by The Undertaker and is split open. Somehow, JBL is able to whack The Undertaker in the head with a steel chair, but Undertaker came back immediately and was able to chokeslam JBL through the announce table, the Spanish announce table. Why is it always the Spanish announce table? I gotta say this. Fun fact. JBL was a fresh champion. He had defeated Eddie Guerrero at the Great American Bash in June, and he had been champion, I would say, 3 months now. And his second rival was another true life friend, The Undertaker. But what we don't know, what some of you may not know, is fun fact Eddie Guerrero was happy to be champion, but after a while, it became a bit of a burden to Eddie Guerrero to be WWE champion. So when JBL won, Eddie felt a sense of relief. However, nobody was more burdened than JBL. JBL, what he went through in his championship run was brutal. And we enjoyed it because JBL was a heel. So, again, he got chokeslammed through the announce table. Undertaker, with his strength, is able to drag somebody who's the same height as him and weighs just as much as him over to the hearse. And darn it, Heidenreich interferes. And Undertaker tried to fight back, but the numbers game became too much. And JBL ended up winning the match and retaining the championship successfully, boasting on why no one should bet against JBL. But this was also the start of a pretty interesting rivalry. If you want to get somewhere, feud with The Undertaker. But then Heidenreich faded into obscurity for some reason. But that feud really put Heidenreich up, helped him a lot in his career. I think it did. I could be wrong. But nonetheless, this was the start of a Heidenreich versus Undertaker feud. And Paul Heyman was driving the hearse, which he took backstage, so that Heidenreich can ram a truck, a Jeep, into the hearse. But The Undertaker wasn't in it. Speaking of Paul Heyman and The Undertaker, if the Usos get drafted to Raw tomorrow night, Roman Reigns is going to act like The Undertaker did when he was drafted in '02. He's going to be throwing stuff. The head of the table is going to break his own table and everything else in the room. So, for everyone's sake, hope the Usos remain on SmackDown so they can feud with the New Day again. That was an awesome rivalry. Otherwise, Roman's going to be angry. That's all the time I got for you today, folks. And I'll see you again another time with another review. See you later.